Hello. Yeah, I guess it's now working.
Okay, great. Hello.
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 There we
Hello,
go.
everyone. Yeah, so first off, welcome back to roundtable number three. So, yeah, has been a long time coming. I am joined here today by a couple of very illustrious guests today. Like I'm honored to have you guys here. First here is Good Blood. I think it goes without saying. His intro, like his work on the Legend of Zelda series, is just revolutionary in many aspects. I'm a big fan. And the quest with Aaron here. He has done a wonderful work there with Breath of the Wild and translations in general for the Legend of Zelda series. And and Monster Maze will be joining us hopefully in a few minutes. He seems to be having a slight delay, so he'll join us later. All right. So first things off, I know that I gave a brief intro to you guys, but I want you guys as well to uh, give us a bit of your own words. Just let the viewers know who you are, what you do, and how you feel about Zelda, etc. You can
Sure.
start.
Okay. Oh,
You can start, Aaron. Yes.
okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Aaron, and I have a YouTube channel called Quest with Aaron, where I upload YouTube videos on The Legend of Zelda and the lore. We specifically look at the Japanese side of things. In particular, we look at words, phrases, and just chunks of the lore that have sentences or like words that don't quite transfer well to English. Kind of look at how they are in Japanese, what the words are, and kind of look at the other nuances and implications that may be attached to them that could provide kind of unique or new insights into The Legend of Zelda. But yeah, it's kind of what I do on my YouTube channel. What else did you want me to say about what I like about Zelda?
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so let's see. So my first Zelda game was, I think, Link's Awakening, if I remember correctly. Um,
Same.
I'm not sure if it was actually. Oh, that's awesome.
Really.
Yeah.
Shortly after, I think it was Ocarina of Time as well I played, but I remember I have vivid memories of playing Link's Awakening, and I think that um, obviously back then I didn't speak any Japanese, didn't know anything at all, and I didn't get very far. Link's Awakening was really hard to play as a child, but yeah, just like every kind of release of Zelda, um, just enjoyed playing them all, and it's kind of what triggered like my motivation to study Japanese in the first place, to be honest with you, because I always
Mm.
felt like there was something else there to kind of look at and to kind of I wanted to kind of like grasp a new perspective on the game. Um, but yeah, that's kind of a bit about me, I think.
Nice. How about you, Javid?
Man, that was such a great introduction. Um,
Thank you.
let's see if I can match it. So my name is Javid. I have a YouTube channel called Good Blood, and I also have like a little kind of branch called the Hyrule Journals, where I do more Zelda-based content. Professionally, I've worked in the kind of film content creation industry for about 15 years as like a kind of a multifaceted creator, an editor, motion graphics designer, bit of graphic design, bit of writing and directing. Um, and trying to funnel that the reason I started a YouTube channel was to try and kind of upskill myself and give me a platform where I could just kind of be more creative with what I was doing. And it's been incredibly valuable being in the YouTube scene, being able to get feedback from the community and kind of help me refine my communication abilities and the way I communicate through editing and storytelling. Um, so that's been great. So I've been doing YouTube for about 8.5 years maybe now,
Wow.
um, which is yeah, it feels it's kind of crazy, but it feels kind of like super quick. But I've learned a lot through that, and what I've learned from YouTube has also helped me in my professional realm as well. So right now I work as a freelance, like kind of filmmaker, working for lots of different clients, doing pretty much all those skills I kind of talked about. But when it comes to Zelda, like same as you, Aaron, Link's Awakening, and I'm a bit embarrassed to admit that it was I played it through emulation. So
Oh,
I think it was like maybe like 4 or 5. My friends, I was over at my friend's place and he was showing me Pokemon Red on his computer, and I'd never played Pokemon before, and I was like, dude, how are you doing this? And he introduced me to like emulation. So that's how I started doing it, and I eventually got Link's Awakening and played through that, and then I think it was like Link to the Past, because I never had a Nintendo growing up. I was always like a Genesis, like a Sega kid. And then I was a PlayStation kid. My parents bought us a PlayStation, my brother and I. And so the games that I was playing were more linear based things, you know, the Crash Bandicoots and the Sonics and all that stuff. And so when I saw Ocarina of Time at my other friend's place, I was just kind of blown away with the multi-directional aspect of Ocarina. It was yeah, it was the idea that you had like a freedom. You could go and as soon as you kind of exited the Lost Woods, you could go wherever you wanted almost. So that kind of stirred something in me, like a fascination more with Zelda and where Zelda was going, because I only played like the 2D Zeldas up to that point. Um, and yeah, the love for Zelda just never really died. You know, like and this was like in the 90s, and when the 2000s hit and the internet started taking off, found that there were lots more people online who loved Zelda and got really fascinated with getting plugged into the community, the Zelda community. So that's what I'm doing on the Hyrule Journals channel at the moment, is really trying to widen, by doing kind of interesting stories and some documentary work, looking at like real stories behind the Zelda scene, trying to kind of gift it to the Zelda community. So yeah.
dude, that was amazing. I want to just also point out, I think the community aspect that you mentioned just now as well is also really affected me too. I resonate with you on that. Because when I first started my YouTube channel, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I was, to be honest with you, I'd never really done much translation before, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't make a YouTube channel. But just like the growth, that as kind of an individual, my love for Zelda as well, and just thanks to the community and everything like that too. As like a translator as well, I feel like my skills have gone up even more. So I really connect with you on that part when you say like being in this space of people who share the same love for Zelda is really affected us as individuals. I think that's it's really interesting. It's really cool.
Absolutely, and it's really grown over time. Like I think that's been really cool to see. Like yeah, just the fan base growing has been pretty cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm actually mind blown to hear your stories. Like that is so interesting. I'm someone who well, I started my YouTube channel actually covering something that isn't Zelda. Like my namesake is for Zelda. Like Zelda is like one of the most important works of art in my life. Like I think that it really influenced me in terms of like appreciation of like artistic touches in different aspects, like from music to thematic writing to characterization, and appealing to more like classical tropes of presentation. Like you don't see many works of art in many different media today where you have a main character who like he is not mute, he speaks, but you don't see him speak as a design intention. Like a lot of people say that this is more as a way to the audience connecting with the protagonist. But I think there is something special with Zelda when I was growing up, which is like seeing how every other character reacts to you as the protagonist. Like you see more the effects of what you do to the world. I think that Miyamoto actually said this when he was developing Ocarina of Time, which is that he is not that concerned with writing the protagonist as much as the characters around them. I think it was a quote related to Twin Peaks, actually. Like which influenced the creation of both Link's Awakening and Ocarina of Time. So when I was playing it, I really, really felt that. And yeah, so it's a series that has lived with me for a long time. My first game was A Link to the Past, so I was a Nintendo boy like from the start. I grew up playing video games when I was like 3. I had a Super Nintendo at home. It was just a joy. Like the 90s were great, man. But yeah,
They were great.
yes, and so ever since then, like A Link to the Past was quite hard for me when I first played it. I think the
Same.
first Zelda that I really started to get into and go far was Ocarina of Time, and that was a magical experience for sure. So yeah, ever since then, I've followed every console release and seen how Zelda adapts to different ages and different art styles, and yeah, so I have this love, but I didn't have that much time and space in my channel to explore it because I'm currently invested in a different a different series, Final Fantasy VII. So I've been working on a video series that breaks down the chronological history of not only the development but also like breaking down the narrative progression of the game. So
Wow.
yeah, so now the only thing that I did currently from The Legend of Zelda was a trailer breakdown back in 2021, I think, when they first revealed more stuff from The Legend of Zelda, when they showed actually Link falling, skydiving, and etc. That was my first real Zelda content. But I hope that I start doing what you guys do. Like I think that your work have really inspired me to push in that direction soon.
That's
So
awesome,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, also.
That's great.
Yeah. So now I want to move on to something more technical in terms of topic. So with a lot of focus put into game mechanics and structural formulas for the series, when you look into how people discuss what makes Zelda Zelda, I think that was very prominent in the Breath of the Wild days. And also in the Tears of the Kingdom, now that it released and went even further in a different direction. So a lot of people talk about the more game aspects, but considering the circumstances, like now that there is a film on the way, what would you say that defines the Zelda identity? Like, what exactly makes Zelda Zelda in a way that you don't have to rely on game mechanics, on things that make a video game?
So is the question more about like if you take away all the game part of it, what's left that
Exactly.
stands as the Zelda
Exactly.
identity? Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Aaron, do you want to kick it off or what?
I can try. I mean, I think I get the question. I mean, it's just what defines like Zelda, right? Like
Yes.
that allows it to go from being just a game into like a movie, I suppose. That
exactly, like an
obviously,
intellectual property, basically. Like, how can you get an essence of what makes a Zelda Zelda in a way that you can translate it into any medium you like?
any medium. Oh, that's a big question. I think like because obviously
Yeah,
recently
it
there's
is.
kind of yeah for sure. I think recently that I've read that like the developers kind of they place a lot of focus on gameplay. So taking that away or not away, you can still have well obviously when you're watching a movie you're watching Link do something, but I think like having the essence of dungeons and things, because obviously that's where lots of the gameplay comes as well, is quite important. And I think it'd be really interesting to see how they do this, because obviously when you're playing in the dungeons and you have all the puzzles and things like that as well, when you're playing through it yourself. So I think it'll be super interesting to see how many dungeons there actually are in the movie and how many Link goes through, and if he goes through them on his own, because there's going to be segments I think that if he's going through them on his own, if he doesn't have like a partner as well, like someone like Navi or Midna or Fi, I think that it's gonna be really interesting to see how they translate that to a kind of movie format. And I think if it were a book as well, I think the same kind of thing would apply. But I do think that in a movie format, I tell you, one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to is the music. I think the music's going to be incredible, and I think that. Oh god, I'm gonna start rambling way too much here and I'm gonna go into the other
Dude, go
topic.
for it. Do it. Do it. I want to hear it.
Okay, but I think that obviously it being live action, definitely like because obviously I did think that it was going to be animated the first time it was announced. It's like Zelda movie animated, let's go. Wait, what live action kind of thing? And I do think that's also going to be really interesting to see how they portray that. But obviously the budget's going to be massive as well. And I think that yeah, it's going to be really cool to see how they kind of translate that from the game into like a movie standard. And I think that like what defines Zelda is like again like are we going to have Link speak as well? That's a question I've seen lots of people kind of ponder as well. Like is he going to speak? How is he going to speak? What's he going to say? Should he speak? I really don't know, to be honest. I mean, it'd be weird if he just did like kind of grunts like or something, But I do think that I think that it's hard to say that there's one specific thing that defines like the Zelda identity, the identity of Zelda, that you can kind of take that into like a movie kind of format. But with that said, I think like with the music, with the kind of like iconic locations that we've seen. Obviously, I assume it'll be set in Hyrule. I mean, it sounds like the best kind of setting for the first game. In terms of story as well, I think making Zelda more of a main character. I mean, she's the title of the franchise, but making her a character that appears more in the movie, I think, is going to be quite a big thing. Because how like in the Mario movie that we had Peach, who was way more kind of involved with the story, as opposed to like in the games where she's kind of at the castle at the end or something, right? Oh, recently she's been playable as well, but I think that having Zelda play more of a kind of immediate role, I think, is going to be a big thing to see as well. I think that's going to be a bit of a change, maybe, because obviously in games such as Skyward Sword and stuff, like she's doing something, but we don't see it. Like we get told that she's doing it, and we see her halfway through, like, hey, yeah, I'm gonna go and go here now. I was like, okay, bye, and then that's kind of it. So I think it'd be really interesting to see her more as well. But yeah, what do you have to say, Javid, before I ramble too much?
Yeah, no, that was good. I and just with what you were saying before, like that there are so many different versions of Zelda.
Hmm.
Um, I kind of see Zelda as like, one of those holographic cards where like depending on the direction you look at it, it kind of changes shape and the character moves. I feel like the Zelda series is kind of like that, depending on where you come in.
Hmm.
Even from like an art style point, the
Wow.
art has been different on every single game, and art kind of generates a feeling to the player, in and of itself. So like looking at like Toon Link. Toon Link is the version that's been in the most games. It's been in like 5 or 6 games. So like if we were looking at like one art style, well, Toon Link was probably the one that's most identifiable. But I think it's like from a thematic point, and this is my standpoint is as a Zelda fan who has been investigating Zelda for years now. So that I'm coming at this from my that perspective, but Zelda has layers, right? Like so Zelda on the very top level, it wears its heart on its sleeve as far as courage, wisdom, and power, and those three, how they kind of work in balance, right? Like I feel like those themes are really clear. It's similar to like it wears its heart on its sleeve, similar to like the Pokemon theme song. It's about friendship. It's about getting, sticking together, and it's about, it's not easy. It's not hard to confuse what the Pokemon theme song's about. And I feel like on a surface level, Zelda is the same, where it's just like courage, wisdom, and power. It's about this little hero kid character who goes out into this big fantastical world and finds out he's the chosen one. He's probably part of some kind of prophecy, and saves the day from the big bad. It's really simple. Um, and from a movie standpoint, you could easily grab that. Like that's been done a trillion times, right? But I think the concerns, and we can get onto concerns later. I know you have a question, Hylian, about that later, but
Yeah.
um, there is a layer underneath where it starts to get a bit more complex. where there's a lot of stuff in there about spirituality, and there's a lot of stuff in there about mysticism and and fate and predestination and all this stuff that I think for me as a Zelda fan, I like to connect to that stuff. Um, and so I think that there's a level of complexity in the Zelda series, even though a lot of the developers have said time and time again that it's not the Zelda series isn't about the story really. It's about creating these play spaces, experimenting with play and player expression. Story is just a tool to kind of, for lack of a better word, tacked on to give player a sense of direction and purpose and like emotional engagement. Um, and so I think if taking away the game stuff, you're left with a really kind of scattered jigsaw of elements. And I think that's what's scary about someone putting a movie together, is because we're now giving it in the hands of a few directors who aren't even Japanese directors, to kind of bring all those pieces and make sense of it and trying to craft something that's coherent. Yeah, that's my answer.
I think that like what you say there about how obviously they're not Japanese directors or producers or whatever. Obviously Nintendo's funding half of it and will probably have a big say in it. I do agree that there is that element of like uncertainty in how these sort of things are going to play out. Like, because obviously Zelda has always been kind of composed like as a like from a Japanese kind of standpoint, like in Japan, I mean, right? And then obviously they've taken inspirations from like a myriad of religions and other cultures and things like that as well. You can find many bits and pieces of that in there, and I think it'd be really interesting to see what kind of approach or what kind of elements actually end up coming together in the film. And I think like obviously if, just kind of backtracking a minute back to what you were saying a minute ago about like the like power, wisdom, and courage and things like that. I think that a big staple of the Zelda series has been kind of Link's growth as well, and in the sense that like he possesses the spirit of the hero in maybe all games, depending on how you want to get into this right now. But yeah, the spirit of the hero and stuff, right? His growth as like an individual, as a hero, becoming a hero essentially, and also Zelda. Zelda's connection to Hylia as well, I think, is very important. Although obviously that wasn't really emphasized as much in earlier titles, and I think that like because obviously Zelda has evolved massively throughout the years as well. Each game is kind of like it's so drastically different. It's still Zelda, but like it always has a certain like element or kind of feature that's like very new. And I think that as the series has progressed and as like more people have come to have actually got into Zelda, the series itself, I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of approach they go for. Are they going to emphasize like Zelda as like just a princess? Are they going to emphasize her like kind of connection to Hylia? Are they going to have Link as a kid and then go into an adult later? Or I think it'd be really interesting to see how they what kind of decision they choose regarding that.
Totally.
So I think
Yeah,
from what I get from you guys, you think that at the end of the day, like it's more thematic things, broader strokes of themes like courage, wisdom, and power that the Triforce represents, and the growth that Link embodies in each adventure, right? There is one thing that you guys touched on that I have very strong feelings for actually, which is the Japanese aspect. Like I know that it's very it's a very common talking point since Breath of the Wild to say how Japanese The Legend of Zelda is. Like it's definitely, if I were to give my take on that, I would say that indeed like the Breath of the Wild era games are the most Japanese styled ones. I think that it has the stronger a more stronger presence of Japanese culture elements to its world and its presentation. But I think that it has been a thing since the beginning. I think that the Japanese aspect is one of the core things about The Legend of Zelda that differentiates it from the rest. What do I mean by this? So I know that there are lots of IPs that are also Japanese and they have Japanese spins to things, but The Legend of Zelda is special, in the sense that it takes a lot of Western culture iconography and interprets them in a Japanese light. So I think that is one of the things that really helped it grow in the West. Like, you hear a lot of how Zelda is sells better in the West than in Japan for a lot of generations, actually. How you hear a lot of theories and people connecting the Legend of Zelda games to iconography and Christianity and Judaism and stuff like that. And you can see that there are some people involved in those games that do have indeed some background in researching and expressing interests in those icons and mythologies, etc. But I think that it's really that Japanese flair to everything that makes the difference. And also, I think
Yeah.
that there is a strong sensibility from Nintendo as artists that also makes Zelda special. Like, I think that if you take Zelda and give it to a different developer, like even in terms of games, right? I think that it would not feel the same way. You can take the CDI games are an obvious meme, of course. Everybody loves to make fun of them, but even if you take like Capcom, like the Capcom Zelda games, they are beloved, yes, but I still feel like there is a difference in how they feel and how they are presented compared to more in-house Nintendo games. And I think that the crux of this is that they seem to have a sort of like classical inspiration on how they convey their stories and their art styles and everything. So
Mm.
this is something that I'm exploring in my channel in the near future. I gave a brief hint of this in my Smash Brothers video recently, which is the idea of audiovisual classicism. Like, you can take Walt Disney films like from the older days, and you see that there are very common sensibilities with Nintendo games, like characters
Mm.
that embody universal archetypes. There are very strong roots in mythology that bring a sense of familiarity, but they're always telling new stories that convey very human experiences. So there are not a lot of very contemporary appeals to like music or dialogue and stuff like that. They're very classical in a lot of aspects. You don't see that
Mm.
often in films. You don't see that often in games or animated films. So that aspect, that classical approach, is also something that differentiates Zelda from like Final Fantasy today, mainly today, or other numerous titles, fantasy titles in gaming and even film. Like, people say that, oh, the Lord of the Rings is the film industry's version of Zelda, but I feel like there is going to be, and I think this is a very important thing for the film to get right, is to not lose track of what it is. Like, what is Zelda? So I think not. I think I might be rambling a bit too much too, but like it's.
Oh, hey, go for it.
No, but
But I think that it's very important for these things. Like, I feel like Zelda is so many things, and these things need to be get right, like throughout different medium. Like, of course they can't show all like numerous dungeons, like exploration in this way, because films are shorter experiences by default. Like, you would have like what, a 2 hour film or 2 hour 30 minutes film, and in film you usually have to have like a plot with conflicts between main characters and secondary characters against antagonists, and a lot of dungeon crawling aspects are more appropriate for like series, for TV series. They are more long form. They you can spend more time in like smaller details. But
mm.
a film is something that needs to be more direct to the point. So what you said about dungeons, Aaron, I think that That is something that should be more aesthetically in the film, but I am not sure how much that is going to be a focus of the films. Yeah, I think that would be my take on that too. Like, what do you guys think?
You got something, Aaron?
Go for it, Java. Go for it. Go for
Yeah,
it.
good. Yeah. Just one of the things you said, Hylian, about I forget how you phrased it, but more about like how they're going to take how are the directors going to make sure it stays Zelda. Um, and I think the great challenge is my how I see Zelda in my head is different to how Aaron sees it, and different to how Hylian sees it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think, and that's one of the complexities and things I love about Zelda is that, like I was saying before, depending how you're looking at it, there are so many layers to it. You can connect with different things compared to, say, Mario, where it's pretty flat. It's the story is really minimal. Um, you could interpret things up to the wazoo because there's hardly any story to play with. So when it came to adapting it into a film, you could kind of do anything. It could be the origin story. It could be exploring Mushroom Kingdom and doing whatever. But I think with Zelda, there's definitely a risk of like, okay, everyone's version of Zelda, everyone's viewpoint and things they connect with and how they interpret a story, um, is now getting funneled down into one or two Western directors. And they are then creating this film, this story for the masses. Like this isn't a story for the, as much as we'll have fan service. Um, this will be for I was reading an article earlier as I was researching and kind of getting mentally prepared for this chat. Looking at the goal is really to create more Zelda fans, to point more of the public to playing the games, and so their story is going to be, I'm guessing, probably quite surface level, really accessible to the masses. For kids, for the guys in their and girls in their 30s. And so I feel like it'll probably have a bunch of combat, some dungeon stuff, courage, wisdom, and power. It could be an origin story. Who knows? But it's yeah. I highly doubt that it'll get too deep. I don't. They probably won't explore. And these will be my famous last words when they probably do this in the movie. But they probably won't explore Zelda's connection to Hylia. That is layers down. That's way beneath the surface. That's down in the soil. I think it'll be about a hero rising to face these challenges in a new fantastical world. I highly doubt we'll see some of that kind of lower level mythology. So yeah, there's risks there definitely. I think in a way, and maybe this could be a launching pad for someone else to jump off, but like the Zelda timeline's so massive, you could put this story in anywhere. Like one of their main themes is reincarnation, right? Like these power, wisdom, and courage get reincarnated centuries after centuries, and the hero keeps being reborn, and so you could slot this in anywhere, which is kind of cool. And so I guess that's a way a lot of people will look at it, was that, okay, the story just slots in between that 10,000 years between Breath of the Wild and whatever happened before that. Yeah.
I think that like what you're saying, I agree with it, to be honest with you. I think that having it kind of accessible to kind of anyone, like reaching out to kind of like basically all ages, like anyone at all really, can just kind of jump in, watch it, and enjoy it, kind of like the Mario movie, how it appealed to a large viewer base. And I think like even my partner, like they have no interest in Nintendo or Mario, none at all. But they loved the movie. They loved it, absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
So I think that for Zelda as well, since I started doing YouTube, and when I my very first videos, and I would like just translate things, just provide a single translation for one thing. Big mistake. Do not do that ever, because
Yeah, right.
there's lots of reasons for this, and it's like even like from the Japanese player base, right? The Japanese player base, these guys, all of them, they all have like their own individual ways of interpreting the story and lines and things that have been said. And I think that when you then when you're one of those people who read the Japanese and you try and translate it and then provide your thoughts and interpretations, it kind of gets messy because like especially it's kind of going as translation over here, but like translation is never like one single set defined translation, right? You have to. There's so much that goes into it, and I think that one of my mistakes that I made when I very first started YouTube was that I would just translate everything one line. Like this is how it is in Japanese. Da-da-da-da-da. No, it's not. This is one way you can interpret it in Japanese, right?
Yeah,
and I think that that's just from translating it into English from my own kind of like interpretation of it. And as you said, everyone's interpretation, everyone's kind of like experience with Zelda is different to an extent where like I remember that when I was reading some comments on my YouTube video, some I can't remember which one it was, but either way, I talked about some part of the lore that I thought was like, okay, this is how it is, and then I had people who said, yeah, it's great, and then a guy was like, no, it actually could mean this too. I'm like, oh my god, I did never think about that,
Yeah.
and I love that kind of like community, like how we we come together as a community and we kind of like bounce off each other's ideas and we kind of provide other old like interpretations of things and like perspectives of things. And I think that kind of brings me back to what you were saying a minute ago, Javid, about how like Zelda can be quite like I kind of get what you mean with the layers, to be honest. I think kind of taking a step back from all of that and just making it not super simple, like, but making it like, because obviously making it kind of like accessible to the point where no one, like, someone who doesn't really know anything about Zelda at all can kind of watch it and kind of understand it. I think like the games as well, like obviously one of the things I think the games do so well is that even if you're new to Zelda, you've never played Zelda before, you can start from anyone. It doesn't really matter. And I think that if you are like somebody who has played Zelda a lot and you choose to, you replay these games, you can kind of pick out on things you didn't notice before. So I think that, seeing how the movie kind of incorporates those kind of things, maybe like, as you were saying, like fan service, I guess I would call it that. Parts that, maybe people who have that bit more like kind of experience with the Zelda kind of lore would kind of be able to recognize, think, oh, that's really cool, kind of like the Mario movie did loads of that too. So I think maybe we'll see a similar thing with Zelda. So I do think that, but the story kind of starting off with like kind of someone who, I don't think Link will start as a hero or anything like that, like in Breath of the Wild, how he was kind of like already, like, how he got reset, how he went into the Shrine of Resurrection. I think it will start with like kind of just a normal kid and then kind of going through his adventure, maybe. I mean, I don't know. It'd be really interesting to see how it turns out, but that's kind of my thoughts on it, really, in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's it. It could be anything, like, and that's the thing with Zelda is there are so many. Yeah, I'm just gonna harp on what I've already said, but there are so many angles to it, So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they funnel it down into one story.
Absolutely, yeah.
I actually think that there is something that you said, Aaron, that actually lit up a light bulb here above my head, because there is something very interesting about the idea of something more like an entry point that helps people to understand what is happening in the world of Zelda. It is true that every game, you can start with any game from scratch, and then you can understand like the story itself and etc. I think by virtue of how the game's stories are connected, right? They are so separate. They are separated by usually centuries between them. So the fact that the gaps are large means that you can basically reinterpret the world in a way that you can reintroduce things easily for the player, for the audience. So it's an easy way for new players to join in, but also there are lots of games that rely on a number of lore elements that are not as easy, that are not as simple to get into. Like if you take, for example, Breath of the Wild is an easy entry point to some because of how it approaches its story. But when you look into the story itself, like it has so many roots into Skyward Sword and like how it's connected to the bloodline of Hylia. And if you don't have that background, you won't be able to appreciate the story in its completion like something like Ocarina of Time. If you play Ocarina of Time from zero, like that's a perfect example of a story where you can, if you never played Zelda in your life before, you can actually like start understanding everything, and it's a perfect entry point to every other game, like or A Link to the Past as well. So I think that a good idea, a good framework for them to actually achieve this would be something like appealing to these kinds of titles and going for something like a Star Wars. Like I think that Star Wars is an easy, like one of the most influential works. Some could argue that it also had an influence in Zelda in certain aspects, but I think that the first film, the first Star Wars film, like it's episode 4, right? It's in the, you start the film already in the middle of a battle, like it's something that is, wow, it seems that there's so much happening, but the way that they introduce the stories and the characters is so easy to understand. It's a very simplified version in a way of how the universe works after you finish all the other films. So Zelda could do something like this. I think. I think that the idea of the hero's journey. I think it's such a universal tale. Like it's such a universal understanding of conflict, character, and growth. That Zelda is perfect for this. Like it's an archetypical work. So doing something like this, like you suggested, Aaron, I think it's the blueprint for success. So yeah. Wow, great stuff, actually. And by the way, Javid, I also really loved your comparison, like how Zelda is with those holographic images, because I think that is such a
Yeah.
beautiful way to visualize it. Because indeed, like throughout the years, you can see Zelda from different perspectives, and different people can see completely different facets of Zelda. But if I were to also put the other side of the coin, it's also interesting how Zelda survived with such an integrity after 35 years of existence compared to so many other franchises in the industry. Like you pick Sonic or The Legend of Zelda, or Final Fantasy. Those franchises evolved into such completely different beasts that the fandoms are unrecognizable. The works themselves are completely unrecognizable. But somehow, The Legend of Zelda, even after all those spins, they still maintained such a consistent core that you see so many of the fan base still sticking to the franchise after decades. So even though they have different looks sometimes, and they might appeal to different types of stories, I think that there is still something that is very core to the franchise that has been preserved throughout the decades. Like it's one of the franchises that is the most consistent with itself. And I think
What do you think that is?
I think well, one of the things would be its universality. I don't know if that's a real word, but like its appeal to universal values of like not just classical heroism, but like how it presents its characters and stories in classical forms. That's what I nodded to back with the classicism that Nintendo has, which not many artists today have, which is having strongly archetypical heroes and secondary characters that provide such a vivid universe that connects with a very strong-rooted writing, like the writing between different games, like the fact that they are distant from each other in terms of like the timeline, helps them be like they can sell their sequels and prequels in a way that other franchises don't have the same virtue of having. Like it's much easier for people to join. And I think also how they might change, for example, from cell shading in Wind Waker to something more realistic like Twilight Princess. But the core elements of the story are still strongly recognizable, and they are told in very familiar ways. Like they are different,
Mm.
of course, but they still have very a strong sense of familiarity. I think it's just an artistic style that has maintained that
Yeah.
strong identity. Miyamoto, Koji Kondo, like in the early years, of course, but also like how Eiji Aonuma was able to be a person that continues Miyamoto's legacy into the later years. Now with Hidemaru Fujibayashi, that's something that you can argue is also somebody who is capable of maintaining those elements together with all the musical team, etc. So I
Mm.
think that might be the core, and this is one of the reasons why I am a bit concerned about the movie, because that strong artistic consistency is like we only have Shigeru Miyamoto in the film, but I am not sure how much creative power he will have. Like a lot of people say how he was a supervisor in the Mario Brothers movie, and he is the guy who created all these things. So it's almost like he is taking care of his children. Of course, like he would have an enormous love for supervising everything, but he is also somebody who is relying on a third party source to create the film for him, to produce for a market that he feels like he needs the input of, like an American, to create an American film for an American audience. So there are certain cultural and artistic barriers that might spring up from that difference, from that shift between creative
Mm.
heads.
Yeah, I think you're right in that this the storytelling pillars have remained somewhat intact since the beginning. You know, you've got the Triforce, the names of the characters. You know, it's actually quite amazing, and I guess it's you're right. Like compared to Final Fantasy, where the characters change every time, more or less. Um, and I forget the other franchise you mentioned. But
It's
yeah, I mean, the main character is still Link, right? Like,
Yeah.
like these storytelling pillars are the same. But I would say, ironically, what I think one of the other pillars of the franchise is reinvention. So the
Yes.
ability to for the Zelda series to reinvent itself every time for new hardware, or for in order to achieve a new plateau of player expression. And so I think that that's also, again, feeding back to what I was saying about the different layers and whatever, is that's also another challenge that these directors are contending with, is like, which version are we going with? Which how do we kind of reinvent this again that stays true to uh, that core sense of reinvention that the series has? Yeah, it's just super tricky because you're creating a film that's passive, right? Like the
Yeah.
ability to be active inside a Zelda world, it makes a Zelda game what it is. But now we're shifting completely to a passive viewpoint. As an audience member, we are submitting as audience members to someone else's vision of what Zelda is. And I think that's scary, and I think that puts a lot of people off as well. As like, well, I don't want to submit. Everyone has their own idea about what a Zelda film could be. It could
Mm.
be an anime, it could be an animated film. Live action was definitely not something I was expecting.
Same.
Like everyone's got their own idea of what a Zelda film could be, because they relate to different parts of these storytelling layers. Um, I think I'm getting off track, but all to say, like, reinvention being such a massive part of the series, but then to kind of funnel it all into one style is going to be,
Yeah.
yeah, like a massive feat.
I would say
Yeah,
that. Yeah, sorry.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Aaron.
Oh, okay, thank you. Oh no, I was just gonna say that. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So like as you were saying a minute ago, how like how is it gonna be watching it from like a kind of, obviously it's gonna be passive as opposed to like kind of active, where you're engaged as Link and you're playing as Link kind of thing, as well. So I think that
Mm.
um like one thing that I kind of appreciated in Tears of the Kingdom was that was the increase of the number of cutscenes in the game. And I don't know, whenever I found like a dragon's tear or something, or like any cutscene that appeared, like I always go, oh, let's go, let's what's gonna happen. Like I always
Yeah.
loved that kind of like the kind of like the hype, that feeling of like excitement of watching. So I feel like that if it is like if we have a whole movie, obviously it's live action, and like you said, it's a movie, so it's going to be someone else's kind of lots of people's visions, I suppose, channeled into kind of one thing. I think it's still going to be. I hope it's going to be just as exciting as it is when you watch a cutscene in kind of like Zelda, but in just complete, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I don't know how long it's going to be, but however long it is, kind of format. And I think that I hope we'll be pleasantly surprised, to be honest.
Yeah. If I can just interject real quick, Hylian, I know you had something to say. Uh, One of the videos I've been working on for the last 6 months is looking at the progression of the Zelda series, but how one of the other kind of philosophies behind the series is to not use realism. Like keep a sense of artistry and
Yes,
use an art style that's open to interpretation. You look at Skyward
absolutely.
Sword and its paint, watercolor kind of use. Wind Waker with its cell shaded. It's as far from realism as you could get, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so in a way, even with Breath of the Wild and Tears, watching these cutscenes, it's animation, but it's still kind of cell shaded, lights bouncing off things in really interesting artistic ways. Um, and even looking at Zelda, there was a moment where I was playing Tears, just looking at Zelda's face and the way that her features kind of seem to just kind of blur, and the way the light hits and the cell
Mm.
shadedness, like it's always kind of moving, this artistry, this kind of painted cell shaded style. But then to also then do live action where we're looking at real people's faces, I feel like it's in a way that's taking away an element of what the developer's vision has been for the Zelda series, was
Yes.
to keep it interpretive, keep it kind of keep you at arm's length a little bit from the visuals to allow you to interpret things your own way. And so that's a major concern I have with the live action stuff, is like we're looking at people's faces. These people exist out in the real world. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I have to. You actually anticipated a point that we were going to explore, which was this is why I actually chose to talk about this identity that transcends the medium, because it was it was the seed for this criticism, because I share the exact same idea that you have. I think another thing that makes Zelda Zelda is its stylized approach to things, like to the world, to the characters. It's
Mm,
completely far removed from like the Western obsession of trying to be as realistic and as greedy as possible. It portrays mature themes and mature ideas, but it never loses sight of its fantastical elements, and it appeals really hard to like Japanese artistic sensibilities, even if it
Mm.
goes like from cel shaded to something more like 90s anime with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. It's always rooted in stylization. It's always like this. So yeah, I think that's
yep.
why like animation as a medium, like Walt Disney Animation Studios has earned so much cultural heritage throughout the years, that it is mainly because of their animations, and of course, but this a lot of people think that animation and stylization is something more for kids or stuff like that, but I think that that is far from the truth, and it's the main reason why Disney is such an empire today. They didn't produce like live action films until like 30 years after they actually earned so much from just their animations. And a lot of that came from how not just kids, but adults resonated so strongly with that. Stylization is something that helped exaggerate some things about our own reality in a way that it helps intensify characters and story and themes in a way that a live action medium could not provide. And
Mm.
I think Zelda
Yeah.
as an IP has inherited a lot of that. Miyamoto was actually on record saying how much he was inspired by those animated films when creating. Like, for example, Link's design was completely inspired by Peter Pan. Like, it's from Walt Disney's Peter Pan. Like when he was creating like Super Mario Brothers 3, his entire design philosophy was taking the entire Nintendo team and everyone should go to Walt Disney World. Like that's why I'm insisting on the Disney aspect, because it's important to know the artistic roots of the people who are making the intellectual property, and you can see what their
Yeah.
mindset was. And it has always been appealing to the fantastical, to the stylization of characters and the world, because it's easier for people of all ages to understand and to resonate strongly with things that might not necessarily be realistic. So
Mm.
this
Yeah.
is
And just on that, like
yeah,
I it's it's fascinating how they didn't go animation when
yeah,
Mm.
a lot of Miyamoto's earlier. I mean, even now, he's obsessed with Disney. He was obsessed with like Disneyland. He talked
yeah,
about it all the time. You know, he talked about, you know, he wants his games to be theme park attractions. And so it's like, well, if there's ever a Zelda movie, surely it's in collaboration with Disney, because that'd be Miyamoto's dream, right?
yeah,
So for them to go this route is so surprising. Um,
yeah.
it's hard to compute.
Yeah. I was shocked too, to be honest, when I first saw it. I did not expect the announcement to be, yeah, live action. Like all kinds of things popped into my head. Like, what about this? This? How are we gonna do this? This? It's like, oh my god, like
Mm,
kind of like overwhelming. Like, obviously, with Tears of the Kingdom, especially now, like I've noticed like a massive increase of like Shinto inspired things, right?
Yes.
Like the shrines, for example. There's so many elements of Shinto that's in there. Obviously, they can still probably do it to an extent in live action, but it's going to be really interesting to see how it turns out with the developers being obviously Nintendo, but obviously yeah, like we were saying earlier, kind of Westerners as well, kind of taking the lead a bit. So I think that'd be really exciting to see
mm,
how that goes.
Uh,
yeah.
Actually, now that you guys are talking about like their own like Nintendo's own vision, like for how they would expand to films, it's actually interesting to take a step back from just the Zelda film in general before we actually explore more its potential and looking at Nintendo's general cultural endeavors of pushing into the realms of film. Like, what do you think of Nintendo's push in that direction? Do you think they started on the right foot with the Mario movie? Do you think they didn't? What do you think they should improve? What kind of position do you think they should take as a film creator moving forward? What do you think they should do?
Mm,
I think like just to start off the conversation, I'm just gonna go kind of what I'm thinking of here off the top of my head. I think the Mario movie was amazing. I do. I think like I said, it was animation as well. So I thought like the visuals were great, the music was great, the references were great. The kind of like the artistic style they had in there was so good, and I feel like that it could resonate with kind of like we were saying earlier, like with anyone. And I really hope that they take like the Legend of Zelda is also going to follow in its footsteps to an extent. Obviously, it's like we're saying, it's a live action, but I do think that, I mean, what direction are they going to push for? I mean, like it's hard to say.
yeah, I can interject. Yeah, I think Nintendo is a toy company. You know,
Mm,
um they've always positioned themselves not as a video game company. They're a toy company, and so like
mm,
with developments into Amiibo and even Labo, like they're always thinking about their products as toys. Even the video games, these are toys that people interact with. And so I think the movies, they're not toys. They're stories. And so
mm,
I've got a feeling the way that they see them is as marketing tools. They see them as a way to, you know, obviously movies have this massive reach as far as audiences go. And so to have a Mario movie, it's like, whoa, it's I'm not sure what the numbers are. It'd be fascinating to see, okay, how many new players picked up Mario after watching the movie. Like that'd be really interesting to see.
Mm.
But I've got a feeling they see these movies as marketing tools, as a way to kind of extend the reach even further on. I mean, everyone already knew who Mario was, but this was a way to kind of get into films and excite, especially it's a kids movie. Like all the parents are gonna take their kids along who love Mario. Zelda is a trickier one because it's a little bit more dense, right? Like it's not as bright and colorful and bouncy all the time. It's for
Mm.
the experienced players, there's a bit of darkness in there. And so yeah, I have no idea how they're going to do it, but I think it'll, is from a marketing point, it'll be as accessible as possible, right?
I think that yeah, I agree with you, to be honest with you. I think that having it being like we said, like, kind of appealing to as many people as possible, as accessible, as it can be. I also think that, just kind of adding to that, like, who are we going to have, filling the roles as kind of, the main trio, I suppose, Zelda, Link, and Ganondorf, assuming that well, Ganondorf appears as a villain, which I assume he will. But it's going to be, because obviously, if you have, it's kind of tricky, right? Because if you have a famous kind of actor, right, that everybody knows, it might kind of appeal to audiences who haven't seen, or who aren't as kind of like familiar with Zelda, because they're like, oh, that actor's playing this film, that's cool. It could be another way to kind of like promote the film in a way. But I also think that having someone as Link, specifically, someone who we don't really know. I think I was reading, I can't remember who said it, but there's some people who are suggesting that we have someone brand new take the role of Link, and I feel like that is a very good way of doing it, because, like, obviously Link is really great because not only is he kind of like his own kind of like individual like character, but it's also a way for players to project themselves onto onto into the Zelda universe. So I do think that Link kind of plays many roles, and I think it'd be really interesting to see if they do go the route of having a kind of like, well-known actor play the role of Link, how that's gonna kind of actually affect the overall kind of film's like narrative, its general feel as well. For
Yeah.
stuff like Zelda as well, like Zelda, I think is a bit different. I feel like that it'd be interesting to see who we do get as Zelda. I'm really excited. I know the thumbnail for the video was Watson. I was like, she actually as good as Zelda. So I thought that was yeah, that was pretty cool. But yeah, and for Ganondorf, I thought about it. I was thinking about it earlier today, actually. Like, who would I like to play as Ganondorf? And I'm a really big Witcher fan. And I was thinking maybe Henry Cavill could do it. And like, I kind of, it's kind of tall, kind of, it's very muscular. Kind of like, I reckon he could do a good Ganondorf. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it's gonna be
Yeah.
interesting to see who they pick to, kind of fulfill these roles as well, I think.
I think without jumping too far ahead, Hylian, into your questions, but like how the relationship between Miyamoto and the directors, I wonder how that's gonna kind of play out. Because
Mm.
from Miyamoto's standpoint, he's been a part of this for years, but I think he's sometimes removed from how players interpret his games, and so I wonder if there'll be a little bit of tension there. Yeah, I'm sorry, Hylian, I know you're going to ask us about what we think about the directors, so I might just kind of hold off on what I'm going to say about that. But yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay. So just one thing that I really want to guide to the direction, because you Aaron talked about how they are going to appeal to certain actors. There is one thing
Oh
that
yeah,
I
sorry.
think is very no, there is one thing that I think is very relevant to what you said, which is how are they going to try to expand their markets to people who are not necessarily familiar with their works, right? Like if they hire famous actors, they are going to definitely attract people who are fans of those actors and try to check out like, oh, this guy, I love like Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise might play like some like the King of Hyrule or something. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but like there are lots of fans of certain actors that they would watch anything that they do. So there is a lot of strategy that I think is behind also like going for a live action film. But I think the main point here is that in terms of Nintendo's position as a filmmaker, like what they want to do in the future. We were talking about Walt Disney's influence on Miyamoto and Nintendo in general, and I think that that is also something that is strongly feeding into Nintendo's new phase. Like I think that after Satoru Iwata passed away, I think it's undeniable to see how much Nintendo has changed. A lot of their positions in terms of wanting to appeal to new practices, new markets, and they've been studying, getting into film a lot of the time. And I think a lot of that has to do with wanting to become a cultural powerhouse too. Javid, you said that they see themselves as a game company, a toy company. I agree to an extent, because there were particular moments in history with Satoru Iwata's leadership where they changed their stance from we sell toys to we sell games. They started to differentiate games from toys. They started to see the artistic merits behind video games as a medium to tell stories and experiences. I mean, that's some of the main reasons why they hired, for example, Eiji Aonuma. He had zero experience with games, but he was hired because of his strong interest in filmmaking, in cinematography as well. Yoshiaki Koizumi. He is also somebody who joined the team. Like he started working on Ocarina of Time. He wrote Majora's Mask. He also wrote Link's Awakening, I think, right? And all of that came from his strong desire to create films. Like his main dream originally was to become a filmmaker. So there are a lot of artists at Nintendo who already had that vision of, games are mediums to tell stories, and the gameplay experiences are a means of creating this bridge between the player and the story. Miyamoto is somebody who, like you said, Javid, is more sometimes a bit far removed from how the players see their stories, because he is a very design focused man. He is a very he's interested in like how to make this fun, how to make this intuitive. Not exactly the strongest storyteller in the team like the other people who worked on his games before. So with that
Yeah.
said, I think that in my opinion, I liked the Mario movie to an extent. I think it was admirable how they managed to create a simplified, basically an amalgamation, right, of different iconographies from Mario. Like it's not based on any particular game. It takes nods and winks from different games in the series, from Donkey Kong to the first Mario Brothers to Super Mario Galaxy in certain aspects. So it's and even Mario Odyssey, right? So it's a way for fans to get together and see like, oh, I love this reference, I love this, but also new viewers. Like I know that my mother, for example, like she never played a Mario game to like any particular depth before, so this was the first time that she would watch it, she would experience Mario to an extent, and she found entertainment. Like the music also that they use in the film, they're not all Mario, right? They use popular songs, right? They used yeah, they
They
used
sure did.
yes, exactly. So I understand that they want to appeal to new people, but I think that there are some things that I wish they did differently. I don't know if you guys would agree, but I think that Nintendo's position in the world of art is very special. They are one of the few people who upholds those classical values that I talked about, and I think that they should bank harder on that as people who are making films, right? They should stick to characters, for example, that, for example, we were talking about Link, right? If whether he should speak or not. I think that he can speak, but we can during the film. But I don't think it's necessarily the best for us to hear him, like Skyward Sword did, right? There was a scene where Link tells Gruz of everything that happens. This was the first time we actually see in the Zelda series where Link is actually verbalizing everything, but the way the scene transitions, like it makes it creates this realism to the character that, you know, he has a voice, he has a lot of things, he is different from the player, but we are still focused more on the world around him, right? So, and classic older movies, they used to do that. There are a lot of people who think that, oh, a main protagonist who we don't hear is not viable. But look at Wall-E, right? Pixar made a full-fledged film with a robot who doesn't speak. He just says Wall-E throughout the whole film, and certain words that are kind of broken, but it still hit people's hearts so strongly, right? So I think that yeah. Sorry, I think I I went a bit too far.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I think they did it well in Breath of the Wild, where they made him out to be the silent warrior, you know, who just doesn't speak up very much. You know, you could probably speak to this, Aaron, as well, like in the diaries where Zelda's talking about, you know, like, I wish he would just speak. You know, I wish he would just tell me what's on his mind. You know, like they positioned Link as the silent character, which was, you know, because of his duty, right? That was the whole thing, was like he's just there to protect. He's not there to kind of share his opinion or anything. I was like, oh, that's a clever way to keep him quiet.
I think it's really interesting because obviously in Breath of the Wild, in like the cutscenes, 100 years prior to Link's fall, we see like he doesn't even like speak at all. It's not that like we just don't hear him; he's actually just doesn't speak. And obviously, like as you said, he like in Zelda's diary in Hyrule Castle, if you read it, she does say that, like, I wish he would just tell me what's on his mind. I just can't. I just don't know, and it's really interesting because obviously in Skyward Sword as well, especially, like, Link is somebody who can speak. We just don't hear it, right? But in Breath of the Wild, 100 years in the cutscenes and in 100 years in the past, he just doesn't speak. Like, he's literally permanently like straight face. Like I don't think is there any expression? Like, obviously, like, I try maybe when he's trying to protect Zelda at the end, maybe there is some kind of, I mean, you can obviously see like the determination, right? That that expresses from his facial expressions, and I do think that might be something challenging to convey in live action if they go the route, or at least part of the route, where Link doesn't speak or we don't hear him speak. I think that is also going to be very important, and obviously small things like grunts or like kind of like acknowledgements, like or something. They could go a route where they have him speak afterwards, because obviously, like, for example, like in Breath of the Wild, he doesn't speak at all in the cutscenes, complete straight face, and then after he has his slumber in the Shrine of Resurrection, he wakes up and we don't hear it, but he's so talkative, he's like talking and I think that kind of development is really cool. So I hope we see something like that, to be honest. I think
Cool, hey.
I think that having us hear him speak from the beginning, I really don't know how I feel, especially live action. I'm really interested to see how it's going to play out, but I do think there is potential to go a route where you kind of see his development, where he, maybe he does speak in the end or something. I don't know, but I think having that kind of like development for his character would be a really cool thing to do. Obviously, there are other ways to kind of help the viewer understand Link's thoughts and things. Obviously, there's the adventure log in Breath of the Wild, which it can arguably be read from Link's perspective too. So I thought that was a really cool way of doing it, but you can't do that in a movie. So it's kind of like, well, you could try, but I don't know if it would go very well. But it'd be interesting to see what they do with it, to be honest with you.
Well, they had the cartoons, right? Like they had like the Zelda cartoons where Link was kind of like the kind of a goofy,
Yeah.
character, and he was talking, and yeah, but then also like the Super Mario show, because I feel like when the Mario movie got announced, everyone was like, "Oh man, like he's gonna talk, how they're gonna do this." But
Hmm.
then once we heard him talk, there was a bit of an uproar about it. Yeah, it's Chris Pratt. But then it just got kind of normalized. It's like, oh yeah, okay, kind of get it now. Like he's like talking character, and so I think that that could happen as well. Like if we're talking about preferences, my preference would like not even to have feature the three main characters at all. Like it'd
Oh,
be rad
really?
if, or it'd be awesome if we could explore the legend of Zelda from
Mm,
different characters, right?
very true. I
That
agree.
way you could kind of avoid any kind of all that stuff that we attach ourselves to with those characters. Um, but if they did go the talking route, I think it would be fine. Like it wouldn't be my preference, but it'd be like, okay, yeah, cool. Link's talking. Right, let's just move on.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
Actually,
that's what happened with Mario. Yeah.
Very true.
yes. Just one thing now that you guys mentioned this. Because of those design differences that we hope for, but then they have been shown to be a bit different in the announcements, etc. Do you think that Nintendo should, in their pursuit of making films, do you think they should do the films by themselves, or do you think it is necessary that they should always resort to a different studio to do it for them? Do you think it's reasonable for them to go to American studios? Do you think they should stick to Japanese? What do you think about this?
Take it away, Aaron.
Okay. I think that, to be honest, like Zelda has it's been very innocent. This like the series as a whole, anyway, has always been very like every game is kind of like we were saying earlier, it's been very unique in its kind of like kind of foundations, what it is as a game. Like obviously we had the Wii Skyward Sword motion controls. Breath of the Wild is completely open world. Every game has this kind of this unique, distinct characteristic kind of that is kind of founded on. And I think that, to be honest with you, I'm all for the like Nintendo kind of exploring other avenues and just kind of trying it out, because I feel like if we don't try it, we're not gonna get anywhere with it. And I think that, like, obviously there are so many risks that will need to be taken with it. And like I do think obviously like who is it with who's screenwriting it? Is Derek Connolly, isn't it? Is that his name? I
Derek
think he's
Connell.
being yeah, Connor, right? Yeah, that's his name. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so he's
Derek
screenwriting
Connell.
it.
Hmm.
Yeah, so like obviously like I was looking at his reviews of like the sort of games that games movies he's kind of like contributed to,
Yeah.
and a lot of them seem to be like very kind of like average like reviews like from like the general viewer base. Um, but with that said, I don't think that it's like the end of the world, because like movies in general have multiple people contributing to like the writing anyway. So it's not just one person. And I did read somewhere as well that like Nintendo has a massive like presence in the like in the Mario movie as well. So like for example, like very specific like contributions they would make, like kind of they would like share their ideas. So for example, I know that Miyamoto said that like he made Mario not like mushrooms. Like he said, let's do that. And I thought that was really cool. Like that was a really cool and like kind of quirky little kind of personality trait that he was given. And I think so. I don't think that like if we explore these other like avenues, like having like other people contribute to the Zelda series, as long as they're passionate about it, I think that's the main thing. And I think hopefully we can kind of feel that in the work. And obviously this is kind of going back to what we were saying earlier about how the problem with having this live action movie is that we're going to have other people's kind of like artistic expressions kind of funneled down to this into this movie. But at the same time, like for example, if they had like a sequel or like a Zelda Legend of Zelda movie 2, for example, I do think that like whether it be like a completely like brand new take on it again, maybe we see it from a like someone like a brand new character's perspective or something. I'm all for trying to kind of experiencing these kind of new like avenues. And I think it's quite an exciting time for Zelda, because we're getting a movie after all this time, and I'm really excited for it. Like I remember when the World of Warcraft movie came out. I quite liked World of Warcraft when I was younger too.
Yeah.
Didn't think it would ever get a movie, and that was great. So I'm really excited to see where the Legend of Zelda goes in the future. I do think that there's definitely going to be elements like cultural elements and stuff that are maybe. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of deliver that, or like how they bring that into movie format as well. But I think I can't give like a solid opinion yet until I've seen it, you know. But that's kind of like my general thoughts on it right now, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Going into what you said, Hylian, about the Japanese company spreading out into the like American, getting American creatives to collaborate. I think from our perspective, I think our cultures tend to glorify the others, and so I think we tend to glorify Japanese media for its differences, and I think they do the same with Western media. They glorify a lot of mostly American what's like values, or like philosophies when it comes to filmmaking and even action-based stuff, and the heroics, whatever. And so it kind of makes sense that they would come over to grab some Westerners to make a Zelda film. I think I imagine the Zelda fans are like, just do it in Japan, like where like all your kind of philosophies are, and all the cultural nuances that we know about the Zelda series that would still be able to live and breathe in the Zelda film. But so I think who knows how it's so I was watching in preparation for this chat some interviews with the director. I'm gonna butcher his name. Is it Avi? Avi
Arad.
Arad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's the
Avi
producer.
Arad. Right. Yeah. And I seen Maze Runner. I hadn't even heard of him before this. And he's got like a visual effects background, and I watched some of his short films, and they're very action heavy, very like VFXy. I think his one of his short films that he did about 10 years ago just has no dialogue, no real story. It's just kind of an action sequence. It looks really cool. I'm like, well, this is a character that doesn't talk. Maybe he is like fit for the role of like directing a Zelda film. But he seems like a really nice guy, and I think he's actually a Zelda fan. So I'm interested to see how he interprets all, when he finally has the toolbox of Zelda to play with. Like, what's he gonna do with it? That could be quite interesting. Um, but yeah, so I guess it makes sense that Nintendo would look for Western creators to come over and kind of build a probably big action movie. Big blockbuster, right? Like the Americans are great at that.
Actually, Aaron, I think that now that you're living in Japan, I think that you can actually say with clarity as well about this, right? Like how much you see the Japanese love American media so much, right? Like how they think there is a certain special air to them, like they are always aspiring to them in certain aspects, compared to us, where some of us here in the West look up to them like with such an admiration as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's loads of like I kind of like just going off what you were saying just now, Javad, about like how it's kind of glorified, like depending on what country you're from. Like Japan kind of glorifies the Western media, and Western does the same to Japan. I think it's interesting because for sure. I mean, like American media or Western media as well, especially, it is way more like so much more oomph to it, right? So much more impactful. Like in general, Japanese media, like for example, horror, Japanese horror versus kind of Western horror is very different. Like Western horror tends to be more violent and more like fast paced. Not all the time, but that's the kind of general trend that it seems to be going in. Whereas Japanese kind of horror is way more slow paced, and they get like the horror is kind of like the horror element is kind of channeled through this kind of gradual suspense. Um, that is where it comes from the most, as opposed to something that's just like people running away as fast as they can from zombies or something, right? Um, so I do think that, yeah, I mean, both are very different, and I think maybe it could be really cool to see having it clash, like having half and half. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's yeah, it's kind of what I think.
It's funny because like they, looking at games like Ocarina of Time,
Hmm.
especially where there's such Western views on storytelling in those films. There's a lot of their own culture, and this is what I was thinking about saying before was, um, I think it's one of the things I'm nervous about is if they don't involve some of the other Nintendo team like Koizumi or Aonuma, who I think it's the individuals that bring the nuances to the stories. It's not this big kind of Japanese culture that we're going to miss out on. It's actually the individual creators. And
Yeah.
it's for the last 5-6 years looking into like interviews, I've always been really frustrated at how much interviewers don't ask them personal questions about like what books are you reading, like what was your childhood like, like 'cause I think the more we get to know the creators, the more we're going to learn about the Zelda series and the little kind of nuances about and that was the awesome thing about Majora's Mask. That's why
Mm.
that's my favorite game is it's so personal. They only had the famous story of they only had a year to create this game, and so they just poured all of their personal stories into Majora's Mask, and it made for such a personal, like different, unique game, compared to some of these big kind of brushstrokes of Shintoism and even a lot of the stuff with like Breath of the Wild, where they took inspiration from Japanese periods and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Even the Zen garden motifs in Tears of the Kingdom, very Japanese, whereas like Majora's Mask has some Japanese kind of flavors to it, but it's so personal.
Mm.
Um, and I totally forgot where I was going with that. How did I start that?
Happens.
How did I start that point? I
by
forgot.
by talking about how important it was for interviewers to ask about the private
Oh,
the artists' lives to know more about the games.
yeah, yeah. I think that was the point before that I was trying to make. I forgot, but
You
I
go
think it
into
was
Majora's
building off
Mask.
the
Very
yeah,
personal.
I think
It's
yeah.
it
not.
was the
I
cultural
forget.
difference, right? That you wanted to say how the interviewers in Japan, like a lot of the interviews that you read in research, they are different from like what you would see in a lot of interviews in the West. I think that was your idea.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. Maybe it won't be until I rewind this and actually see what my point was. But maybe it was about the Western and the Eastern kind of colliding elements. Where I was talking about Ocarina of Time, how they use such Western storytelling tropes to the rise of the hero, the classic kind of hero's journey kind of vibe. Even though
Mm,
Link, and we could go really deep into this stuff. We
mm,
probably shouldn't, but like, Link as a character, he doesn't change, right? Like he is the same as the beginning as he is at the end. He's a character who never falters when it comes to courage and pushing ahead, and so I think that's another probably concern with the live action film is like we're probably gonna have for the very first time a Link who maybe undergoes personal internal transformation. Like, he's always been that character who it's similar to like a John Wick character or a character who doesn't change as the protagonist. It's the world around him that changes and evolves and grows and transforms because of his courage. Um, so yeah, so all to say, I feel like there's always been a blend, almost maybe of similar to what you were saying, Aaron, a blend of Western and Japanese philosophies when it comes to
mm.
storytelling and kind of artistic uh, implementations, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on there. Actually, I guess I would position myself in a more conservative sense. In the sense, basically, I think that it's important for an IP, for example, to uphold these artistic roots that the artists that created them had with them. Like that's why it's important to bring those ideals, which you said, David, about the artists' lives, like their artistic influences, and how they understand their protagonists. Like how does Link incorporate these ideals, etc. Right? So I guess the best thing that I would say is, if even if they are trying to create like a blockbuster, etc., I still think it might have been. I'm more in the camp that I'm more in the camp of Nintendo being the ones that would create the films themselves, rather than asking for like Avi Arad or Illumination to make the films. At least I understand with the Mario film why they did it, because they wanted to create a park. They asked for help from Universal. Actually, it's interesting now that I talk about this, because Javid, you were actually thinking how the first idea of a collaboration that you would think of for Nintendo would be Disney, right? And they actually tried.
Yeah.
They actually approached Disney first,
Oh,
but
did they?
yes,
Right.
they did, but for the parks, right? But then
Yes.
they
Yeah.
said,
Right. Right. Right.
oh, it's a bit unviable for us at the moment because of how tied our hands are. But definitely find better luck with Universal for sure. So that's when they
Right.
went for Universal, and they signed all those contracts, and managed to get a Universal studio, the Illumination, to create something with them, like as part of that deal,
Mm.
right? So
Yeah. Right. Okay. I didn't know that. That's cool.
I
yes.
didn't either.
So at the end of the day, like there is a corporate reason for this, but I also think that it would have been richer if they just if they appealed to their own internal talent. I don't know if it's just me being more like somebody who has a lot of faith in the Nintendo artists, but as a fan. But I really think that they have like the artistic and cultural heritage to draw from, right? They have people who already have cinematography knowledge and film
Oh, you dropped out
sensibilities.
there.
Are
Is he
you
gone?
are
What?
you here? Are you
Are
hearing
there?
me?
Yeah. There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah. You're back. You're back.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, so basically, I know that they have like the talent, you know. I know that they can create something, and it's a bit frustrating for me as a fan of them to see that I don't know if that they don't have enough faith in themselves to create something from scratch, but if they want to be like Disney, I think that one of the things that would really establish them as a cultural empire, because I think that they have the potential, right? A lot of people say that Miyamoto
Yeah.
is the Japanese Walt Disney. They call Mario Japan's Mickey Mouse, and just look at the Olympics,
Mm.
right? The Tokyo Olympics, the mascot was Mario. Like the Prime Minister of Japan was dressed as Mario in the Olympics. Like he is the country's biggest icon right today. So there is such an importance to Nintendo as a cultural progenitor, right? That I think that they
Mm.
have the power and the potential to be another Disney, like an actual competitor to Disney. You can actually see in some interviews with Nintendo leadership in the last 5 years since the Switch launched, that they are not competing with Sony and Microsoft anymore. They want to compete with Disney. They actually verbalized this. So
Oh, really?
yes.
Mm.
So they know that they want to become something a lot more than just making games or making toys. They want to become what they always dreamed of, like being a new Disney. And as someone who
Mm.
has always admired like classic Disney, I'm not happy with how Disney is run today. Um, Seeing a company that could bring back that kind of old style that Disney used to have and which Nintendo strongly has today would be wonderful. But if they often appeal to to teams like Avia Rod Productions or Illumination, I feel like they are missing out on that potential. Disney became Disney not by cooperating with other people themselves, but by taking risks. Nintendo was always a risk taker when you look at their history. When and if they want to make that bridge with Disney, Disney when they wanted to make a film, they didn't ask for help. They tried making a film by themselves. Like they knew that they had the talent with themselves, and they tried their best, and they became one of the most successful. Like Snow White became the highest grossing film, actually, animated film accounting for inflation, something like that. All these years, it's still one of the most successful of all time. The Disney parks, they knew nothing about like how to create a park from scratch, right? But if they appealed to their own talent, like I'm not saying that Nintendo as a company knows how to build parks, that's not what I'm saying, but they have talent in Japan. That's what I'm saying. Like if they have like people who like, oh, let's create a team from scratch that works under the Nintendo banner. Let's hire the best engineers, let's hire the best designers, let's hire the best artists, computer graphics folks, everyone, and create this dedicated team and create a new cultural establishment under the Nintendo name. Like the Nintendo Museum, like they are always talking about this now. They like we can see that they are very proud of what they represent today. They want to become this powerhouse. So in my opinion, I think that while it is cool and understandable that they are approaching Western studios to create films, I think that it is such a missed opportunity for them to not resort to like Yoshiaki Koizumi writing and directing a Zelda film under like either a CG film, like using their own engines, because honestly, like their games are beautiful. They are stylized. They are not like PlayStation 5 ultra graphics from like Final Fantasy 16 or whatever, but they still look good, right? Or if they want to like have the most cutting edge graphics for their films, they can always resort to like Square Enix. Like Square Enix is now their biggest third party partner today. And Square Enix has already made films. Sure, they are not the best ones, of course, but in terms of visuals, they are the best. Like they, I'm someone, by the way, just giving you a little bit of a background as well. I have enormous interest professionally in computer graphics and engineering. So a lot of the times I look into research papers, etc., and it's quite surprising how Disney and Square Enix kind of compete between each other in terms of like computer graphics papers and discoveries, etc. So there is such a strong push for that quality there in Japan. And yeah, it's just sad to see them not investing in their own talent. I think that's the thing that the thing that I draw from this scenario, right? So yeah.
Well, I guess that their own talents building the next Zelda game.
Yes, that's true. That's true. There is that. Yes. Yeah. And with regards to the film itself, we talked about a bit of the announcement, but did you guys think it was the right decision to just announce it out of the blue like that, like in a post, or do you think it should have been a bit different? I don't know. I was extremely surprised how it almost feel like, oh, it's just like any other day. Let's just drop this news, and it's just happening, guys. What do you think?
I feel like that. Just to start us off here, I feel like that. Yeah, like I said, when I first heard of the news that there was a Zelda movie, I was very excited. Couldn't wait to see. I was like, "Oh, there's a Zelda movie. What's it going to be like? Oh my god, great!" I had all these kind of like ideas and things like that. But yeah, when I heard that it was live action as well, that was something that I was a bit taken aback by. I didn't expect. Really hoping for animation, but I still think that live action could go well if it's done right. But I do think that, like, to be honest, with a Zelda movie, I was kind of expecting an announcement, maybe in like a direct or something, or like something else that wasn't like. Yeah. Like a random like kind of tweet. But in Zelda, like, or Nintendo recently, I feel like has been a little bit strange with its kind of promotions for things like with Tears of the Kingdom. We didn't really get much kind of like marketing for it. I feel like there wasn't many at all or much at all. Especially last year. It wasn't until like a couple months when the game was coming out that we started to see more trailers coming out. I think we got two trailers I think in the first half of this year. I think. But even like going around Japan and stuff, like I started to see like even the convenience stores, they had loads of like Zelda banners out and stuff like that. It was amazing, and I could really feel the hype. But I feel like they were a bit like slow with it. I don't know why. Maybe it's just my own personal opinion on that. But I feel like with the Zelda movie, maybe we'll hear more about it, like a proper kind of like because right now we don't know much at all. Like we just know basically who's directing it, who's producing it. Obviously, I think Sony has a presence in it as well. But I feel like that we should get like a proper announcement or some kind of more like kind of like in-depth kind of details reveal on the movie at some point in the future. Maybe in the form of a direct. I don't know if its place belongs there. I'm not sure. What do you think, Jared?
Yeah, well, it was such a funny day when it dropped. That was a massive day for us, kind of behind the scenes. We were launching Second Wind, the new channel from the Escapist kind of Fallout. So
Hmm.
that was all launching that day. But I think it was it that morning? Oh, but like I kind of woke up because in Australia we're a little bit behind when it comes to getting the news. So the world had already been up and at 'em for a good 8, 9, 10 hours, and so jumping a line and as Australians we always come in halfway through the day where it's all the news has been dropping, and yes, suddenly I woke up to like yeah this is a new Zelda movie being dropped. I was like oh my gosh. Um, it took me a little while to find it because in all the threads and everything, but
Hmm.
yeah, it was pretty strange that it was just like a press release. It was just
Hmm.
a few little paragraphs of like, hey, we're working on this film. We've been doing it for a while. We're doing it with Avi. Wait, how do you say his name? Avi Arad. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, and that was it. Like it, I you imagine they would kind of hit you with a bit of an oomph to get everyone on board straight away. It's a super weak I mean Nintendo. I was so fascinated. I was just reading this article about E3 2000 23 years ago, and they have teams behind the scenes working to like make each E3 and each event as powerful as it can be. And there's strategies upon strategies on how to like get the media hooked in, how to get articles rewritten, do press kits. It's like a production. And for them to come out with this massive announcement that people have been waiting for since Zelda's inception, to just drop it with like a press release is pretty weird. You
Hmm.
think it'd be like a few photos or a cast announcement or just something to get everyone like more hyped about it. But they only dropped the producers and the directors' names, and they're not even that bigger names. It was pretty weird. Yeah, and the fact that it was live action is obviously like super super risky. Yeah, was that your question about like how how it got announced, Hylian?
Yes, basically, like, for example, a Zelda film, in my opinion, like, it seems to be such a major news, right? After Mario being like the second or third most profitable animated film of all time now, not accounting for inflation, like, another Nintendo film would be like headlines everywhere. It should be like this hype thing, but um,
Yeah,
announcing a film this way sounded so, I don't know, lacking a lot of energy, lacking a lot of like that oomph factor that you guys said. So
yeah.
I was wondering if this was like the right way of presenting it, right? Like as Aaron said, like Nintendo is has definitely been a bit weird with how they present their stuff. But even with Tears of the Kingdom, at least when they announced it, they announced like in a major way, right? With that trailer at the end of the direct, it was such a. They didn't reveal
Yeah.
the title, but it was already a big deal. But a Zelda film, which fans have been waiting for decades, like we've been hearing about rumors for like actually it's very interesting when you think about like the history behind um, the creation of a Zelda film. Steven Spielberg wanted to make a Zelda film like in the 80s and 90s. He asked Miyamoto and he was rejected. How
Yeah, wow.
what a bad timing actually. If he waited just a few more decades, he might have gotten the okay sign. But yeah, like, and then afterwards we got that famous IGN April Fool's hoax. A lot of people still use footage from that film, like to talk about the live action film today. Everybody has been dreaming of a Zelda film for a while now, and the fact that it's finally come to fruition, like it would have been such like a nuke on everyone's faces, like my God, let's review this. But no, it was.
Yeah.
I've never seen in my life a film being announced this way. I don't know if
Yeah. How I forget how the Mario movie was announced. Was it in a direct?
yes, it
Or
was
like
in the
it felt
direct.
like it was a bigger deal. Yeah,
Yes.
okay, right.
Was that direct? Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were talking about like how they were partnering with first they were talking about the parks, and then after they revealed the parks they were talking about like, oh, and we're also making a Mario movie. We'll show more details, and then they made like two or three directs dedicated to just the movie. Like they were
Yeah,
building up from the
Yeah.
very start, you know. But
that's
here it
right.
was
I,
just
I
like,
think
oh,
like
yes.
that's why go on. No, go ahead. Sorry. My bad.
No, no, no. I was just exclaiming like the feeling, right? It feels like such a normal thing. Like, oh, hey guys, here's the Zelda film. Like, it's just yeah, it's happening. Thank you. Carry on with your days.
Yeah.
Yeah, insane announcement. For such a massive company and such a massive announcement, really weird.
Yeah.
hmm
What were you going to say, Aaron? I'm sorry.
Honestly, I lost it. It's gone.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
It's
Uh,
no worries, no worries. It wasn't that important, I'm sure.
Uh, but yeah, now talking about the folks themselves, like I know we talked briefly about them. Like Jav, I feel like you have a lot to say about them. But yeah, they announced Miyamoto as the
About
producer.
the directors, the team?
Yes, the team. We have only four people that we know are working on it, right? We have Shigeru Miyamoto as
Mm.
the producer, Avi Arad as the producer, Wes Ball as the
Oh,
director, and Derek Connolly as the writer. So, what do you guys
sorry.
think of these folks and their end products? Oh, you remembered, Aaron?
I,
What
I,
were you gonna
I,
say?
I did, but it's slipping again already.
Okay, go
What did I
for
say?
it.
I remember. Oh, yeah, so no, it's not a big point. It's just that like, didn't they say when they announced the movie that obviously we got the like the producers and the directors' names and stuff like that, but
Yes,
didn't they say they've been working on it for like X amount of years as well
10 years.
already? 10 years? Yeah, that's
Yes,
crazy.
they were talking about it for
Like
10 years.
yeah, I would have thought that maybe they would have had more to show. Obviously they will, but like I'm just maybe I'm expecting like a proper reveal at some point. I feel like sometime soon. I'm sure.
Yeah.
That was it. I just
So,
I realize I need to make a correction, but when I was talking about the director, I said Avi Arad instead of Wes Ball. Wes Ball was the director that I was
yeah,
watching some of his stuff. Uh, yeah, it's a Wes Ball. Again, like I've he hasn't done much. Like he had a visual effects background, and then kind of went more into directing Maze Runner, and stuff like that. So, but he seemed like a really nice guy, and there was a big thing right of 10 years ago. He tweeted out,
yeah.
I would love to direct the Zelda game, and then he's directing it. And so, in a way, that kind of gives me a bit of hope. Like, oh, okay, like even he was interested in this. He was probably thinking about it. But I think with this stuff, like it takes a long time to get a movie made. Like at this point, Nintendo probably would have seen a few hundred pitches from directors pitching their ideas, probably with mood boards, probably with like half-written scripts. And so for them to greenlight Wes Ball as the director says a lot. Like their chosen director is like, okay, that he must have pitched something that was pretty solid, like pretty amazing. Um, Yeah, I'm definitely interested in what his take would be. I don't know much about the other guys. I know Derek wrote Detective Pikachu, so I guess there's already like
yeah.
a Nintendo kind of connection there. But yeah, I actually don't have much to say about the team involved. I don't know heaps about them, but from what I saw of Wes, like yeah, just watching his stuff kind of like, oh, okay, maybe this might not be as bad.
Yeah, I was reading a an article earlier about him actually as well. So I was curious to see what kind of stuff he's done in the past. And like you said, there was the tweet about him, 10 years ago saying, sorry, 2010, him being interested in working on, or really wanting to work on the Legend of Zelda movie. So the fact that that now is becoming a reality, it's going to be interesting to see. And Maze
That's
Runner,
pretty cool.
yeah, it is for sure. I mean, like you said, I think it's really cool that there is somebody who has lots of passion working on it as well. It kind of gives us hope that that will be able to be felt from the movie as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's worked on Maze Runner too, and like I I really enjoyed Maze Runner. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I thought it was a really interesting, um, really cool movie. So, and I have read as well that he did like he worked on some fantasy films that didn't like make it, like they got cancelled. And looking at the
Right.
concept art that he for that kind of these movies, they look amazing. I was like, wow, okay, if this is it, like I was looking at it, I was like, this is Zelda. This could be Zelda, like translated into Zelda. Then yeah, I'm pretty excited. I can't remember
Yeah,
what the name of
right.
it
Okay.
was, but yeah, he's worked on some movies before that didn't make it, that got cancelled for whatever reason. But the concept stuff for it looks incredible. So um, yeah, from the limited information that I do know, it seems pretty exciting.
Mm.
And what about the writer Derek Connolly? I don't know if you guys seen his filmography, etc. I've the moment I saw the Rise of Skywalker, there my skin crawled. I don't know how much you guys
Uh,
are into Star Wars, but yikes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking at it right now. Um, yeah, I'm super worried about, and the thing with writing screenplays is like especially like I'm looking at his filmography: Jurassic World, Kong, Jurassic World again, Pikachu, Star Wars. Like these are massive, massive studio films where there's lots of people inputting, um, they have lots of notes. A lot of the studio execs want their say in the scripts.
Yeah,
So at the end of the day, it's like, okay, how much of it is actually Derek at the end of it? Like it's how
mm,
much of it is actually his script
oh,
versus the amount of
absolutely.
people involved in getting a script made. Um, yeah, and so I think it would suck to be judged on I would love to see a film he wrote when no one intervened. Like I would love to
mm,
see an actual Derek script, 100% him, his own creative expression, his characters. Um, that'd be awesome. So I can't say. I, I just don't like how much of it is Derek. That's the question.
mm.
I
It's a big
guess.
question, to be honest. It's
Yeah.
very valid.
I guess the thing here with films, right? I 100% agree with you there. This is actually something that also extends to games. I've been in my Final Fantasy VII series. I made a point in the beginning about the development team because there are so many people who attribute the success of stories or failures of others attributing to certain people. But when you look at certain works, each work has their own context, right? The way that a film or game is produced is run differently in different circumstances by different people. So you have to really study this to know, like, what exactly is the creative input of each person, and what does that say about their artistic talent. So I agree with you that
Mm.
just taking like one work and saying, oh, it's that person's, like it defines that person's abilities. No, that's not the most reasonable way to approach it. So you should look at the entire career and see how much they participated and like what was the context. With Star Wars, the Rise of Skywalker, like they had to basically rush that film to be made. It's actually quite insane how many changes were made to that film story, and how little time they had to put everything together. So I wouldn't put all the blame there, but when you look to other films, they in his filmography, they're also not that great, and you start to see that if it happens a lot, then it starts being like a coincidence and more like, yeah, maybe this is just a common trend, right? Like this might be something that is involved with the person's own inputs and creative abilities. So, but a screenwriter, the thing that I should put as a caveat here is that sometimes people think that the screenwriter is the person who is going to be spearheading how the story is told all the time. But sometimes the screenwriter's role is just to how do you verbalize the things that the producer wants me to say, right? Sometimes the producer is the one who is conducting how the story is going to be told, and the screenwriter is just trying to put that into prose. Sometimes it's just a screenwriter, so who knows? With how the team is set, I think that it's going to be similar to how the Mario movie was made, which is Miyamoto is going to say like, I want these features to be in the film, but you Avi Arad can tell the story that you feel is more appropriate and aligns with the values that you think would resonate with audiences better. So I think that Avi Arad is going to have a stronger role in how the end product is going to turn out, and maybe he is going to be the one who is telling like Connolly like, hey, this is the story that we want to, this is the direction that we want to go. Try to put into prose these scenes, how they're going to be conducted, etc. Yeah, so Connolly doesn't give me that much confidence, I would say, but Avi Arad, I think, would be probably the most important person to look into. And when you look into his filmography, he's basically the Sonyverse for Marvel. So that's something that, you know, do you guys like Venom? Do you guys like Morbius? Do you guys like the Sony Spider-Man films? One very funny fact, actually, he is indeed involved with game media into TV series and even film before. Actually, no, wait, just TV series. He did a Double Dragon animated series back in the 90s or 80s. It was very short-lived. And a very funny fact, guys. Do you know that Pac-Man animated show that released like in the last decade? It's a computer animated series.
Yeah. I watched a bit of that.
Nice show.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, he actually did that, and he wrote the lyrics for the opening as well.
Ah,
So you can tell like a bit of his own taste of
yeah,
like
right.
how he sees. How do you translate a video game to something more like a passive media? I think that would be a clue there. I don't know. In my opinion, I feel like I want Miyamoto to have more influence, but I'm not sure how much he's going to be able to quote unquote save the film.
Sound like it's over already. Like save it's already failing. I think that he'll have just a general comment, but I think that he'll have. I hope they will have more of an influence on it than we think. It's Nintendo's one of Nintendo's biggest kind of franchises, right? They wouldn't just kind of put something out there that they're not satisfied with. So I think that he'll definitely have, influence in the film, whether it's enough to meet expectations and personal preferences. I'm not sure, but I do know, like I said earlier, he contributed to Mario's character, saying like, hey, he doesn't like mushrooms. This is what we're doing, like that. So I feel like having those kind of, things kind of like embedded into the Zelda film would be really nice to see.
Yeah. I guess the reasoning behind it, behind hiring these people is like how much the strength of the IPs that they handled, like how did they last, right? Actually, you said, Aaron, that Wes Ball said you said it was 10 years ago that he was interested in making a Zelda film. It actually
Yeah,
matches the amount of time, right? That Miyamoto was talking to Avi Arad about a film as well. So maybe that tweet might have been a lot more influential that people might think. So at that time
yeah.
as well, they were like in 2013, it was like what, the peak of the MCU. So I think that in
Hmm.
some ways, the main reason why Miyamoto why Nintendo actually approached these people is because they looked at the MCU and they thought, wow, we could have actually something like this, something that is culturally impactful, and make an event out of this. Um,
Hmm.
so I guess they are betting on that Marvel power on the curriculum. Who knows how it's going to turn out? But I'm not saying it's over already. Okay.
Is it going to
I
save the film? Hopefully.
I am a bit pessimistic, yes, but I
That's okay,
still
it's cool.
have hopes that Miyamoto might do something. Like I feel like a lot of the heart in the Mario Brothers movie is owed to him. Like how
Hmm.
the brotherhood between Mario and Luigi. I think that's something that came from him. I think there are like the designs of characters being closer to the original. Like the original designs for the film were actually going to be so different before Miyamoto intervened. So that kind of thing is actually very, very good if it happens. So
Hmm.
yeah. Now, in terms of Zelda being live action, I think you guys gave a bit of a briefing on that. So I want to hear just one last pull from you guys on like what do you think of a live action Zelda? How do you think it would work? If it would ever work, how could it work? Like what would a live action Zelda? Do you think it would be something more like maybe appeal to something like Twilight Princess? You know, Twilight Princess was
Mm.
aiming to be something more realistic, so maybe go something for that. What do you think?
Do you want to go first, Javid?
Uh, yeah, sure. I think it's one thing to say what I think it's going to be versus what I wish it could be.
Mm.
I'll speak to what I wish it could be. I would love, and they won't do this, but I would love it if they went on more like they kind of went that darker route, even kind of exploring some of the darker mythology of the Lost Woods and the kids can't go in there, like and adding that to the world, but then suddenly they hear stories about a kid coming out, and that's that using that as a way to kick off the story. I think that could be really interesting. I would love to see that. I think that's really kind of mystical and interesting. But yeah, I think yeah, they'll focus on the big three characters. They'll probably have try their best to avoid the um, save the princess trope. Just
Mm.
because that's quite an outdated trope now. Even like looking at how they did Peach, that was pretty, it made her a really kind of strong, powerful character. So yeah, big three. I'm sure there'll be it might even be Link and Zelda kind of traveling together. They kind of hate each other at first, but then they start to like each other over time. Then by the end, maybe they fall in love or they work together to defeat Ganon. But I think it'll be really surface level, just classic kind of storytelling.
Okay. What about you,
Mm.
Aaron?
Um, yeah, like I mentioned, I really hoped that it would have been animation. And most recently, a fellow content creator, what was his name? Ryan Link, I think his name was. He made a Zelda. Is it pronounced Ghibli or Ghibli in English? Ghibli,
Yeah,
right? Zelda
Ghibli,
Ghibli kind of Ghibli?
Ghibli.
Ghibli.
Ghibli, thank you. Sorry, in Japanese it's Ghibli, so I forget which one's Ghibli, which one's Ghibli. Yeah, so
Wait, do you say it's Ghibli in Japanese?
yeah, Ghibli.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Okay.
well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so yeah, I always get confused, and when I speak Japanese, I say it like the wrong way, and in English is so either way,
Oh,
Ghibli,
okay.
right? Ghibli. Okay, uh, um, yeah. So I would have really liked to have seen like some kind of inspiration from there, like most recently is his name Ryan Lincoln? Yeah, he made a like a Zelda Studio Ghibli crossover kind of Ocarina of Time tribute, and that was phenomenal. It was very immersive. It's kind of like how I envisioned it if Studio Ghibli and Zelda were to have a kind of a crossover. That's the kind of stuff that I would have loved to have seen, or like my personal preference anyway, in a Zelda kind of movie. And I think I would have preferred that compared to like versus something like 3D as well, like like in like the Mario movie, for example, it's it's animated, but it's kind of like 3D too. With Studio Ghibli, it's more kind of like 2D stuff. I think I would have preferred that. Maybe I like in kind of like a Skyward Sword kind of esque style. Maybe that's a bit too bright for you, Javin. Maybe it's not dark enough, but I really do like the style. Like Tears of the Kingdom's opening is one of my favorite things. I absolutely love it. I love that slow build up and intense, like the music slowly, like gradually, increasing in volume and kind of like to build up on that suspense. The suspense and the atmosphere. Very atmospheric. Very 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 good. And I would have loved to have seen something like that in animation. Maybe like a mix of both. Like I'm expecting to see like Hyrule being very bright and colorful, and then obviously I think we're getting like a mix of both, like dark and kind of like bright, colorful kind of like scenes as well. I think, but obviously it's live action, so throw all of that out the window, and it's gonna be
No, yeah, I'm totally the same. Like and maybe this kind of links into what you were saying, Hylian, about keeping it all kind of in house or at least in country. We've all kind of dreamed, at least I have, of like a Zelda crossover with Studio Ghibli. Dude, you've got me super doubting my like.
Yeah, me too.
yeah, Ghibli,
Uh,
Ghibli.
yeah, I sounded so confident before when I corrected you, but now I shouldn't have been.
I'll check later.
Yeah, but yeah, just like kind of harnessing animation. Obviously, like Princess Mononoke is a massive kind of
Oh
anime
yeah.
that a lot of people look at when it comes to Zelda. Um, yeah, I would have loved to see a Ghibli crossover for sure.
Yeah, I think that like it's gonna be interesting to see how they kind of depict the like I did a video recently talking about like the dark energies of Zelda, like Malice and stuff like that, and Gloom, and it's
Mm.
gonna be really interesting to see how they kind of like if Malice is even in the game, even if Gloom, whatever they use, it's gonna be interesting to see how they kind of depict that. Because obviously in like Japanese films like Princess Mononoke or any films like that, there's lots of like the energy is very like I don't know how to explain it. Like there's so much like Japaneseness like embedded in the movie that you can
Mm.
like that you can just and obviously that translates to what we see in Tears of the Kingdom to an extent as well. You can obviously see the influences and stuff they've taken,
Mm.
inspirations and things. Sorry. Um, so I think it'll be interesting to see how they go about um, kind of yeah like kind of delivering that in live action. Studio Ghibli kind of style Zelda film would have been amazing. Maybe they'll still do it in the future. I don't know. I don't think it's this is it. This is I think maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised. Um, but I do think the potential possibility of a kind of animated Zelda movie is definitely not out the window for now. I do think that
Yeah, yeah.
it depending on the success of this one as well. Um, if it goes well, then they'll probably do another one, whether it be
Yeah.
like a sequel, another live action. I don't know, but yeah, I don't think that it's never say never.
Hmm.
So you don't think try so basically if we were to think of a way to make live action work, like what exactly do you think they could do, like for example with the different races, like how do you think a Zora or a
Yeah.
Goron would work in a live action film? Like how do you make that convincing? Do you think they should go for practical effects? Do you think they should go for CG? What kind of art direction do you think would make more sense for a Zelda film? Well, how exactly do you think that could, maybe salvage this this option that they went for?
I mean, like just to like get to speak a little bit first before I'm sure this is more your avenue, Javed. But I think that like looking at like Detective Pikachu, like how like Pokemon, we've always seen like Pokemon in like anime kind of style, right? And then when I saw Detective Pikachu for the first time, I was like, oh my God, it's hideous. Like that is horrible. Like of course, like that's how Pokemon would look in real life, I guess. Kind of like
Yeah.
that realism aspect to it. And it kind of gets you thinking, like, yeah, Zora, I can imagine them being very slimy. Like, all this like kind of like, imagery I have in
Mm.
my head of it. And it'd be interesting to see how they tackle that, to be honest with you. Because I think if it's too, I mean, I don't know, you could get something like Avatar, maybe. Um, it'd be
Mm.
interesting to see like what kind of style they go for. What's your thoughts on it, Javed? I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, I haven't even thought about it until you just asked me just then, Hylian. But my first initial thoughts were like, well, each race is bound elementally to an element. So Gorons to rocks and stone and fire, and Zoras to water. It feels like to do it justice would be to do it all practical and less CG. I'm sure they would probably go CG, considering Wes Ball, director, is a VFX artist. Fascinated with visual effects. That's his realm. I'm sure the film will definitely go down that road, that CGI road. But as someone who's, it's like we watched Lord of the Rings. We loved that mostly everything was practical. And then compared to, say, like watching the Hobbit films where they're mostly CGI and everyone hated it. There's something just off about it. And it worries me that we won't see. I mean, depending on their budget, like if you did Gorons, you could have these rad kind of bigger Goron suits, kind of thumping around the mountains. You have kind of beautiful Zora people. Probably don't have to be super slimy. They could be quite beautiful and even shiny. I don't know.
True.
I would love to see practical, not CG, just to give it a sense of authenticity and a grounding and like, this is like here existing in the world. That's awesome. Yeah.
Actually, you talked about Zoras being slimy. The first thing that I thought was like, man, can you imagine if they made like the Zoras kind of like the Fishman from that Guillermo del Toro movie? What was it called again?
Oh yeah, Well,
Water. What was it?
It was a horror movie.
It was Shape of Water.
The Shape of Water. Yes, exactly.
Shape of
Water.
this.
Yeah, exactly. I felt immediately like that and was like, man, it would be kind of creepy. And then what kind of Zora design would they go for, right? Would they go for the Ocarina of Time ones where they actually look like the fish people in the Shape of Water, with some exceptions, of course, or would they go for something more fantastical like Breath of the Wild or Twilight Princess, where you see the white eye lines instead of just that scary black eyes thingy, but yeah, and actually I think that it's very interesting how you brought that up as well, David, about the Lord of the Rings and how the Hobbit was received, because I am absolutely certain that they are going to compare the Legend of Zelda to the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
they are going
big fantastical.
Yeah. They're going to look at it and say, well, first historically speaking, like Twilight Princess was made. There are actually a lot of similarities when you think about it, right? With this film as well. If they're going for live action, you can tell that they want to appeal to the Western market. First of all, Twilight Princess was the first Zelda that was made as well, thinking on the Western audience first. So that's why they dropped the more cel-shaded anime cartoony look and more like towards the realism aspects of it. Of course it still has stylization, but you can read in interviews that they were looking at the Lord of the Rings as their primary source of inspiration, because they thought, in the mid 2000s, the Return of the King was like the biggest craze ever. Like it was gaining all the Academy Awards, everybody loved it. So like Zelda following that path, it was natural. They already did it at that time. So the fact that they're going for live action again and having a very similar history behind it with that intent, it seems like they are going definitely to be comparing a lot to that. And the Lord of the Rings, they were a very revolutionary bunch of films with computer graphics, but there was still a lot of practical effects behind it, right? The Legend of Zelda, the first movie as well, like one of the primary sources of inspiration for the NES film was that Tom Cruise film, Legend, right? I don't know if you guys watched it. It's watch it, you can see that there are a lot of visual aesthetic similarities that they drew from there, and that film was banking hard on like practical effects. So if Miyamoto is still having that thought in his head, like maybe I could bring that style to it, like, man, it would be so awesome if they had like the Jim Henson guys doing the practical effects for all those races again. It would be, I think that would be the main thing that would make a live action format worthwhile. I think that's the only thing that would make
Mm,
me like, wow, okay,
Totally.
that was worth it. But if they
Yeah.
keep everything CG and everything like Marvel, yeah, I'm not going to be that sold. Yeah. Um, so, on to the next topic. What do you think the film's plot will be like? Do you think it will be based on an established title in the series or a new one? And if it's a new one, what are the chances of it being seriously considered part of the canon?
Yeah,
mm,
I feel like I feel like we kind of talked on this one already, like what we desire or like what we think the plot will be. Whether it's canon, I don't know. Like going back to what I was saying, kind of at the start of this conversation about you could kind of slot this in, and because of the mythologies, you know, resurrection, rebirth, um, you know, part of the what do you call it, like the legend. Um, you could kind of slot this in anywhere. So I'm really hoping it's not an origin story, only because we've had that already. You know, like we've
mm,
I hope it's not like the birth of um demise, or you know.
mm.
But I mean, as I say, maybe it could be like, maybe could actually be kind of awesome. Um, but yeah, I don't know whether it could be canon. Who knows?
Yeah,
That'll be a massive discussion until the end of time.
that's very true. I think that like obviously I thought about this a bit too. Like they could like for example Link, right? If they assuming I'm the 99% sure they're gonna go for Link as like the main character, right? They're probably not gonna go for like just skip Zelda, like Link and Ganondorf and stuff like that. But assuming they keep the original cast, which I assume they will, um, I think that obviously they have a few routes to go with Link because Link is there's many games where he's been like a child, right? So he's especially in Ocarina of Time starts as a child. Wind Waker, he's basically a kid, and and obviously he either becomes an adult through uh, passage of time, or you know by drawing the Master Sword in Ocarina of Time, or the games like Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild. You know he's more of a young adult. So I think that it'd be interesting to see if they you know if they choose to go for a kind of child version of Link or a kind of older version of Link. I don't think they'll go too old. It'll either be a child or a kind of like young adult. Um, and it'd be also interesting to see if they choose to maybe go for both. Like obviously we've Ocarina of Time. It still is the most well sold Zelda game of all time, right? Tears of the Kingdom hasn't overtaken it as far as I'm aware. Um, but yeah, so if they do go down that route, then there is obviously the possibility that they could have something similar, like you know, Link becomes an adult like you know, later on through the story by means of time travel or something. Unless they go through they go for a completely brand new story, um, which I do think is very possible as well. Um, and if they do choose to do that, I don't think it will be too complex. I think there'll be some things, kind of what we were talking about earlier, but I do think there'll be some references and things that you know, kind of people who are you know well into Zelda will understand. But all the kind of talks about resurrection and stuff like that, like it's very like the resurrection in Zelda is a very Japanese kind of like thing. Like it's very like Buddhist, right? I don't think that will be. I'm assuming the original language will be in English as well. It won't be in Japanese this time. So I think that it will be very different to that. I don't think like they might not just mention it. Like they might not choose not to mention it at all. Like or maybe they just hint at it or something. Maybe not explain it. I mean Zelda does that quite a lot anyway. They'll leave it up to interpretation, which I think is the best route they should go for. But in
Yeah.
terms of like story, yeah, I do think that um, yeah, it'll be super interesting to see if they um, obviously I'm really excited to see the Master Sword as well. Feel like that is going to be a big key thing. Also, I feel like that because it's titled The Legend of Zelda, it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of convey that to the audience, like why Zelda is a legend. I think that's quite important too, because
Yeah.
obviously we play as Link. Link is the person we see the most out of all the games, through all the games. Whereas Zelda is doesn't get as much screen time. So I think it'll be really cool to see her get more screen time in this movie. Hopefully she does, and yeah, maybe we'll get a new take on why she is a legend because there's loads of reasons contributing to why or how Zelda is a legend. But yeah, I'm interested to see what they do with it.
Wow, you actually landed on a point that I found it so fascinating because when you look at the Mario movie, they were also concerned with like explaining why is it called Super Mario Brothers, right? Usually
Uh,
the films are the games are usually the Mario Brothers saving the princess, right? But the film took it a different spin and focused a lot more on the brotherhood. Like the princess was
mhm,
secondary next to the main thing that was driving the hero. So maybe Miyamoto actually wants to do that again with the Legend of Zelda and focus on that. I just hope that well, the Skyward Sword kind of explained a bit already, like why is it called the Legend of Zelda, right? Like
mhm,
Zelda herself, like her decisions are what led to this alternate history being created due to her actions, creating this fake
mhm,
prophecy that would end up coming true, and then the rest of the series would be the result of her actions, hence the Legend of Zelda, right? But if they try
mhm.
to focus on that again, I hope that it doesn't break away from that vision. Like, hopefully, they
I
try to establish that bloodline with like the original princess, like what's the importance of maintaining that order, etc. So yeah, wow, that
mm,
really is interesting hearing your thoughts about this for sure.
mhm.
I know you guys gave a little bit of your insights on like your dream Zelda, but is there any particular team, any particular studio, or just in-house folks that you really wanted your dream Zelda film to be made by? Like, uh,
Ghibli, but I mean, like
Ghibli?
Nintendo or Ghibli is the biggest one, honestly.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, if it was, yeah, I'm the same. That would be my preferred. My preferred version wouldn't be live action at all. But if it was, was live action, I had a choice. Maybe Del Toro, with his kind of creature, his kind of horror, kind of darker influences, his creature work,
Mhm.
his kind of fascination with mythology and legends, and I feel like he could really get his hands on it and craft something quite interesting and maybe gritty and a bit eerie. Um, yeah, that's the first thing that
Wow.
comes to my head.
There,
Yeah,
yeah, sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, like, yeah, like I think that if we're going for like more like gritty stuff, like just having a bit of a kind of a more of a think just now. I think that if they go like if they had like I would love to see like Nintendo and Ufotable, if you know that
Oh
it's an
yeah, yeah.
animation studio
Hmm.
who does Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba,
Oh, yeah.
and I think they do the Fate series too. I think, but their animation is absolutely incredible. And obviously, Demon Slayer is very full of like loads of Japanese kind of like culture references and stuff like that. Like it's all about demons, right? So I think that would be really cool to see how they deliver something like that in Legend of Zelda. But that's the kind of thing I would love to see. I don't think it will ever happen, but yeah, we'd love to see a crossover between those two companies.
Nice.
That's cool.
Well, actually, and David, you mentioned Guillermo del Toro and his fascination with the eerie, etc. Now you just made me visualize what a del Toro Majora's Mask film would be like, and I can't stop thinking about it
Yeah,
now. Holy moly, that
yeah,
that could actually kind of work. Yeah.
yeah. Well, oh, totally. I mean, his even looking at like Pan's Labyrinth, that's such a great jumping off point for a Majora's
Yes.
Mask film. How this little kid engages with these myths and these characters and stuff, monsters. Yeah,
Wonderful. Well, I guess to finish off this topic, I think I would say that on my end, I am a fan of the idea of a Ghibli cross not crossover, but like a collaboration for sure. I think that Miyamoto and Miyazaki already they had an interview between each other like in the 90s. It was very interesting to see them talk about each other's work and the fact that they had this history already makes this collaboration such a historically and artistically profound one. Breath of the Wild now, a lot of people love to make the bridge between it and Princess Mononoke. I think that it's so, dude. Tears of the Kingdom's opening, like actually, I am still confused. Ganon, when he attacks Link, is that Gloom or Malice that destroys the
It's
Master
Gloom.
Sword? It's Gloom. Okay.
It says in Japanese. It says like a blade that shatters like to my gloom essentially.
Oh, okay.
Will not save you from me or whatever. Yeah, it's all gloom. Like even the black stuff you see in Tears of the Kingdom at the very beginning, like all the dark smoke, that's also gloom. Um, but it's like yeah, obviously as they go deeper, it gets more kind of not concentrated, but there's just more of it, I suppose.
I see.
But yeah.
Well, I'm waiting for more of your work actually, Aaron, because there are so
Mm.
many things from Tears of the Kingdom that I think that the Japanese would bring so much light to, and you are the man for the job for sure.
Thank you. I mean, I'm like I said, I have my full-time job. It takes up so much time, long commute, and I'm trying to work on the. I'm working on a video like every day, like a new video, like and hoping to get. I'm hoping to get another one out next month in December about Ganondorf. So fingers
Oh,
crossed.
that will definitely be amazing. Yeah. So yeah, on that opening in Tears of the Kingdom, you can definitely tell that like that is so Princess Mononoke, like how the gloom attacks us. Even the arm that Link actually gets up infected is the same one from Yoshitaka, right? Um,
Uh,
so
yeah.
the influence is there like more than ever. But I think that my optimal dream, if there was to be like a collaboration, might be Studio Kara. I don't know if you guys know it. It's the guys who
Sort of.
made the Evangelion films. Like, are you aware of the
Evangelion.
universe
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Evangelion?
I haven't seen it, but I know it's very popular. And
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, like so basically this studio like has already such a deep rooted history in Japanese culture in the 90s and how it evolved how it persists even to this day. They're not
Hmm.
as popular as Ghibli, of course, but I think that the artists that work there are extremely talented, and the way that they wrote their stories, like especially Evangelion, I think it would resonate so strongly with a Zelda film. And I actually have a very strong impression that Evangelion has been deeply inspired by Zelda in certain aspects. There is even a film that came out, not the last film, the one that came before, like in 2012,
Hmm.
Evangelion 3. The film concludes with like the fairy fountain theme almost. Like you can actually hear a part of the fairy fountain theme in the climax of the film. Um, there are some narrative beats that feel very familiar. And Zelda also took a bit of that in Skyward Sword and stuff like that. I can talk about this at length later, but I think that
Hmm.
a Studio Kara collaboration would be my dream.
Nice. Yeah.
All right. So, guys, I think this is it for the topics. So, any closing thoughts? And feel free as well to show your channel, like tell everyone to check out your stuff. And to all my viewers, please do so. These people are. I didn't invite them here for nothing. They are some of the most talented creators I can think of by far. I'm an enormous admirer of you. So please, guys, check their work out.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was an honor to be here. I had a great time and hope to be back again. Yeah, just I guess yeah, I have my channel is called Quest with Aaron. I talk about Japanese side of Zelda and look at the words and stuff. Like I said before, they can't be seamlessly transferred into English and kind of break them down and kind of speculate and interpret what that means for the overall lore for the series. So yeah, please check me out. Thank you so much, Hylian, for inviting me.
Oh, you're
Yeah, thanks,
welcome.
Hylian. My name was Javid. I run the channel Good Blood and also the Hyrule Journals, where I look at real stories in the Zelda universe and trying to put them into documentary form and really interesting little packages. Yeah, hope to do this again.
Awesome, awesome. Guys, I linked all of their channels in the description here for the stream, so please check them out. And again, thank you guys for tuning in. And Javid and Aaron, it's an honor to have you guys here. It was such a great conversation. Fingers crossed at the end of the day that the film turns out as good as we hope for.